Hello, my name's Dustin Anderson. I'm here with Scott Larkin. Let's just go ahead and tell us a little bit about your athletic training experience and your current position.
Yeah, my name is Scott Larkin. I'm an athletic trainer and clinic coordinator here at the Warrior Athletic Training Program. Work for Auburn University. We're military athletic trainers. We work out of Fort Benning here in Columbus, Georgia. A little bit of my background. I've been an athletic trainer for 17 years now. I graduated in 1998 with my undergraduate degree and became certified that year. Overall, kind of clinical experience for me as an athletic trainer is really probably a combined 4 years. In addition to being an athletic trainer, I'm also a certified strength and conditioning specialist, and that's really where I've spent probably the most of my career, is as a personal trainer in the fitness world and in strength and conditioning. So combined 17 years, again, probably 4 of those athletic training, and about a good 15 of those have been in the strength and conditioning world.
Okay. To you, what is evidence-based practice?
Evidence-based practice is basically, it's just the science and the research of what we're doing. You know, it's taking a lot of the stuff that we're doing here in the clinic or in the field, doing research on it to find the validity of it. Is what we're doing, is what we're doing actually doing what we think it's supposed to be doing? And that's kind of how I look at evidence-based research.
All right. How do you utilize evidence-based practice in the athletic training room?
You know, I think we utilize it a lot. You know, a lot of what we do is, and in our field too, things change a lot. You know, we know maybe things that we did 10 or 15 years ago may not be the best thing that we do now. And then I think it's the best way to use evidence-based research is to look back to the way I did things when I came out of school, 17 years ago, and how things changed, how has science improved our technique, how has science basically told us that, yes, this really works, or yes, this really doesn't do what it says. And so for me, being in this a little bit longer, that's how I kind of look at it, is for the things that I really learned back in my undergrad, is what we learn still the best way to do things.
Okay. Anything recently that you've read that sort of changed the way you do anything?
Yeah, I think a good example of that, and there's a lot more research out there on the usage of ice, for example. We as athletic trainers, especially back when I went to school, we use ice, man. That's what we did. We put ice in everything, and oftentimes that was the first line of defense, is to, okay, they're hurt, let's put some ice on them. Especially if we don't have an opportunity to evaluate them right then and there, let's put some ice on them and we'll evaluate them when we can. But I think that's one thing you're seeing a lot more research out there is ice isn't doing necessarily what we thought it was doing. In terms of, is it actually helping that recovery process? Is it actually helping that rehab process? Or is it potentially hindering it, by hindering the good things happening with the inflammation process? And so that's something we've really heard a lot about, I'd say, the past 4 or 5 years, okay, in terms of evidence-based and ice specifically.
All right. Just to keep up with that question, what have you found in the clinical setting is the best way to deal with any type of swelling as opposed to using ice?
I'd say movement, elevation. I think movement's key. I think we know that. We've known that for years. Our bodies heal better when they move. You look back 20, 30 years ago when people had an injury, oftentimes they just immobilize them forever. And we found pretty quickly that wasn't the best way, and so I think movement, if we're able to move, is the best way to mechanically kind of flush that inflammation out of there. Combine that with elevation, combine that with even compression, and we're able to really get that swelling and that inflammation out of there pretty efficiently, pretty quickly.
Do you feel prepared to practice evidence-based medicine?
Absolutely. Yeah, when I think about it too, evidence-based medicine is kind of a new term. We've used that term for a couple years now. But when I think about it, it's research. We've been doing research forever. Even when I was in school, we did research, and most of what we learned was based on research. So I don't think that's changed too much. But I just think there is a lot more evidence out there. There is a lot more research out there on the various topics. Okay. And so I'm definitely prepared. But I also know as a clinician, as an athletic trainer, as a strength and conditioning coach, that preparation is going to be nonstop. What we know now, we know is probably going to be different in 10 years. And so the evidence-based part of that is never going to change. It's going to have to be a constant update. But I definitely feel prepared.
Okay. Do you have much experience with evidence-based practice?
In terms of what? Give me an example.
We'll just draw on the parallels here with this job. You're an athletic trainer, you're also a strength and conditioning coach. So you have two ends of the spectrum with anything. So you look at the injury, then you can look at what they can do physically.
Yeah, no. And also what I guess going with that too is what I find about evidence-based medicine and practice is it's a foundation of what we do. You know, we learn it through the science, but then I also feel, and this is maybe something I've just learned from kind of being at this a long time, we also know what we kind of read in the books and what the research say doesn't always transfer completely to what we have to do in the field in terms of rehab and stuff like that. You know, sometimes the book may say things should be done exactly like this, and then we kind of get into practice and realize that, you know, you got to modify things a little bit, you got to tweak things a little bit. So although the evidence says this, I think once you start applying that science, applying that research, you know, it changes a little bit. And that's one thing I've just found through experience, is that you've got to do a lot of modification. Even if the book and the science says do A, B, and C, you know, once you get doing A, B, and C, sometimes that works really good for me, but it may not work exactly great for you.
So I guess just to make sure that I understand what you're saying, you take what you've read, you take your clinical experience for the population that you're working with, and you make the adjustments as needed for whoever you're working with.
Yep.
Whether it be you know, someone doing rehab or someone working on a strength and conditioning program, or both. You've got it from the beginning, then you take them to the end.
Yep.
Is that
absolutely
sort of what you're trying to get across with that?
Mm-hmm.
All right. The last question: do you think evidence-based practice is relevant for athletic training?
Absolutely, and for that same reason I said before, you know, everything we do is based on science. Everything we do is based on evidence, and we do want to be able to prove exactly what we're doing, especially when you look at insurance. That's something we have to deal with. You know, we don't focus on it so much here in the military setting, but in other settings, you know, insurance is a big part of what we have to deal with, you know. And for example, with Medicare, if you can't prove certain things, they won't reimburse. And so I think that's where evidence-based, you know, research and science and medicine comes into play, is to help prove what we're doing is working.
Yeah.
Because, you know, again, in terms of reimbursement, if you can't prove it, you're not getting reimbursed. And that is a big part of what we do, you know.
And do you think that would just add a little bit more validity to the profession, just proving our worth? Because we're fairly new in the medical community.
Yeah, absolutely. And people like to see the numbers, you know. People, you know, we could say anecdotally that this works. You know, we've been doing it for years, and here's the results we get. But the outsider looking in, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to them. And so if they could see this research, if they could see this kind of objective measure that shows improvement, I think that's going to hold a lot more ground than what I say. You know, you kind of look at the other end of the spectrum. You know, if you go into a court of law, you know, it doesn't matter, you know, what's in my head. You know, it's what's on paper. You know, that's what they're going to see. And that's the same thing with this. You know, people want to see that research. They want to see what we're trying to say is actually happening. So I think it's absolutely vital.
All right. Well, thank you for your time, Scott. I enjoyed the conversation.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.